Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Parenting Hour. You're tuned in to Unity FM 93.5 here in Birmingham, and welcome to our Luton listeners who are tuned in on 105.1. Inshallah, you all had a nice little break there over the last couple of weeks and managed to recharge your batteries and feel energetic again and back into routines again, inshallah, with your children back in school. Alhamdulillah, the weather has been good, but with this nice good weather we have some cold, so please forgive my voice because I have a bit of a cold at the moment, and if I start coughing it is due to that cold as well. But hopefully it won't disturb the nice show we have planned for you today on air. Here in the studio we are with Misbah, so I'm sure you will recognize Misbah when she starts talking. Misbah's full name is Misbah Ameen-Khan, and she is a dietitian and a lecturer, university lecturer, and you will know her from her Good Health show that she does a bit before when we come on Tuesdays at 1 o'clock on Tuesdays, so you will recognize that voice. Assalamu alaikum, Nisma. Welcome to studio.
Walaikum assalam, Sister Kathleen.
Lovely having you here, mashallah.
It's very lovely having you here too.
Yes.
Or being here, actually, on your show.
Yeah, we've done some work previously with Approachable Parenting where you've come and you've done a lot of work in helping parents understand the importance of diets and what to eat, etc. So we had lots of great examples of your work live with us, which was wonderful.
Oh, thank you. That's very kind of you to say. And I must say, I mention your show quite a lot on mine because I love listening to it, A. And B, I think Approachable Parenting does such excellent work with, spreading knowledge amongst a section of population that can't easily access it, among parents and mothers and fathers of young children who haven't got the time or the energy. So spreading information among them is just so vital, and you do a great job of it. So,
Jazakallah khairan. That's very kind of you to say so. Well, today we're here because of National Obesity Week, and we're trying to link in with the different weeks as we do now to try and find out what's happening so that our shows can reflect on that. And this came as a flag, and we said, okay, we've never spoken about this with you. We have done obesity in different ways with health visitors, with doctors, professionals in that respect, but we've never talked about it from a dietitian's perspective. So it would be nice to get your perspective on things, and I'm sure you talk about this all the time on your show, but we have a different set of listeners, maybe some same, some different, that would really want to know how they can improve their diets, what they can do, what does obesity mean, etc.
Well, I think it's a great initiative what you're doing, so Jazakallah khair for recognizing that. It's really good. Secondly, this the National Obesity Awareness Week is, from what I understand, it started off as an initiative from this charity called the National Obesity Forum, and they've been doing it for a couple of years. They're making it very technology savvy, or they have made it very technology savvy, where they're spreading awareness about obesity, the scale of the problem, and the risks associated with becoming obese and staying obese or overweight even. And this basically, they're on Twitter, they're on Facebook. They're currently, it's running from the 14th to the 20th of January this year, from what I understand. And it's something that really could do with a lot of awareness given the scale of the problem, actually. So when I came over to Approachable Parenting, we did a workshop with mums and children, and there I'd mentioned, and the figures possibly vary a little bit, if not so precise. But at the moment, with a couple of reports, very recent reports that have come out in 2017, the scale of the problem is that nearly 1 in 5 primary school children, when they start primary school, are overweight.
Wow.
Or obese, and 1 in 3 secondary school children get to that stage by the time they get to the ages of 10 to 11, and it's predicted by 2020 the numbers are only going to rise quite a lot. And when it comes to adults, nearly about 2/3 of adults were classed as being overweight in 2015. Or obese. So it's not just, about, when you have about 63% of adults in England are overweight or obese, that's a huge problem, actually. Yes. And it's not just a case of, being overweight, because when and I mentioned this quite a lot, it's not just a case of being overweight because of cosmetic. It's often, being overweight often is looked as a cosmetic concern. Wanting to have that aesthetic value of where the society promotes this image of being thin is good, quote unquote. But there are two things that are very wrong with that picture. One, you could be thin, quote unquote thin, or what society deems as thin, but quite unhealthy on the inside, with a lot of fat covering your organs. You're eating all the not very healthy foods, high sugar, high fat foods. But also, it could be that being overweight, and the reason why this is a problem, the reason why obesity is a concern and why they're doing this whole awareness week and why, that lots of things keep coming up is because obesity actually causes, being overweight actually causes the NHS something like £6.1 billion a year.
Wow, mashallah.
Yeah.
A lot of money.
Yeah. It causes them that much money because, I'll tell you why. Obesity basically increases the risk of developing a whole host of diseases. So it's a chronic condition that's sort of like a stepping stone to a lot of other issues. And it's only looked as a cosmetic concern. So let me give you some figures. You are 2.5 times more likely to develop blood pressure, which is a risk for heart disease. You are 5 times more likely to develop type 2 diabetes. You're at an increased risk of certain cancers. Maybe about 3 times more likely to develop colon cancer. So it isn't anything to do with just being the way you look. It's also actually life expectancy. So people who are obese are actually expected to live 3 to 9 years, live with reduced life expectancy, or live lesser by 3 to 9 years. So that's quite a few years shaved off somebody's life.
Yeah, it is a lot of time indeed, and people, don't realise it. I mean, when you say overweight and obese, they may not think that they are overweight. They may feel good in themselves. They may feel healthy in themselves, and maybe they're just a little bit over, and it just needs a little bit of refining to have come underneath that threshold.
That's a really good perspective, because how do people need to know how can they realistically gauge that they are either overweight? Because, like you just said, some people might be overweight, but they feel this is the way it is. This is my body structure. Just quote unquote, this is the way it is in my family, etc. Or some people might not be overweight and they think that they are. So it's two ends to that. So what we could do is just start off by first sort of defining what it is. So obesity is almost it is a medical condition where excess body fat has accumulated to such an extent that it has negative effects on your health. So how can we measure whether you're overweight or obese? So a good way to sort of do it is something called the body mass index, or the BMI, and that measures your weight for how it's spread for your height. So it's individualized. And how we can, for our listeners, how they can find out their BMI, or how you and I can find out our BMI, is we can log on to NHS, the NHS website, just put in our weight and our height, and it just gives you a very nice pictorial, like a diagram of where you are. So, for example, if you have a BMI of anything over 25 to 29.9, 25 to sort of 29.9.
So it's 30 really.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
25 to 30,
that,
we won't fight over point one.
We'll let that one. So it's that would be overweight. But then they've classified 30 to, being very precise, as 39.9 as obese.
Okay.
So if you get to the figure where it's 30. Now, it is not a very exact science, I have to say, because those who are athletes or very muscular, their BMI could come up as really high because that's muscle weight. So I must mention this. And those who are aging perhaps, and they're losing a lot of muscle, but they still have excess body fat. So if we just define what obesity is, which I've just done, and then, like you said, it's really important for us to get a realistic picture. Am I overweight? Am I obese? Because, like I always say, you need to first have the knowledge, and then you're able to do something about it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So basically between 25 and 30 roughly is about overweight, and then 30 to 40 roughly is being obese. So people, I'm sure there's a lot of people that are leading healthy lives that maybe be in that 25, just over that 25, 26, for example, don't call themselves as overweight. They're getting on with life, doing things, could even be active in their life, and it's not bothering them.
Yeah.
Should it bother them?
Okay, so now there's one thing that I haven't mentioned, which I should. When we look at those figures, for those who are in the ethnic minority groups, such as the Asian population, or basically the ethnic minority groups, the BMI for that falls a bit lesser, which is about 23 plus is overweight, and 27.5 plus is obese. So should it bother?
Is that because of genetics and?
Yeah, that's the great question there.
Yeah.
Like, should it bother them, and is it because of genetics? So, should it bother them, and why is it a risk for them if they're living, which is a very good way of looking at it in one way, because you could be slightly overweight and still have a really healthy diet. You could, you could be physically active, etc., etc. There could be other underlying reasons, such as, your thyroid dysfunction, etc. So that could be there. However, it's important to remember that when you are overweight, especially for the risk for the minority populations, it's because of other things such as visceral fat around your organs, around your middle, which the ethnic minority populations are more prone to. So sure, you've got you're physically active, you are it's not bothering you, but your risk is still there. It is present. And why is your risk present? Because most often times, and the reason why the risk is slightly higher for minority populations is because they tend to carry their fat around the central region, and you could be quite, you may not carry and that is where the real risk lies, because that is the bit that actually increases your risk for all these chronic conditions like diabetes, etc., etc. So you are at higher risk. Even if things are okay now, you're still at higher risk for conditions in the future. Yeah, that risk stays.
So that GERD, that affects men and women, indeed. It affects everybody. They have different names for it in different languages. And men do tend to put around to that area as well as women. So that's the main measurement as well to look at. Yeah.
So when we look at the BMI, a better or a more accurate measure would be, an additional measure, you could say, is the waist circumference. So that's what, I really like you asked that question, because, we're actually, people think they're carrying it all over, but the waist circumference is a really one of the biggest risk and ways we can actually measure whether you're carrying excess fat there. And, anyone can do this at home. So if you measure, I'll just describe it so everyone can visualize, and don't do this while you're driving or while you park up.
And a lot of our listeners are listening in while they're driving home,
So what you could do is when you're when you've got a tape measure to hand, or if you'd like someone to do it for you, to measure your waist, this is how you do it. You, from the bottom of your ribs to the top of your hips, right? Wrap a tape measure around your waist. So where your bottom of your ribs to the top of your hips, so that region.
In the middle there. So around the belly button region, maybe, is that kind of...
exactly. Just around your waist. So midway between these points, basically. So that would be around the belly button. Yeah, that would be just exactly midway from where your ribs end to the top of your hips. Yeah, exactly. So your waist. So breathe out naturally, so you're not holding your breath in. This is quite important while you're taking the measurement.
Not to be deceiving yourself and saying, no, I'm an inch less than I am, but then dying for a breath of air because you're breathing.
Try to be honest and breathe naturally at this point, because I notice quite a lot of people hold their breath in, and what you do is you measure it with the tape measure. It's as simple as that. And the risk for your for diabetes, stroke, heart disease will increase if your waist measurement for men is more than 102 centimeters.
Okay, so how many is that in inches?
That's 40 inches.
40 inches.
Yeah.
Men 40 inches. Okay.
And it is it's a high risk if it is over 88 centimeters or 34 inches for those who are inclined towards inches. So 88 centimeters or 34 inches for women. Anything over 94 or 80, 94 for men or over 80 for women is not a good idea. So definitely you're at high risk if you're 40 inches for men or over and 34 inches or over for women. So a lot of people will say, I've got, my biceps haven't looked any better and that kind of thing. But it's really important to focus on the central region because that, your risk increases quite significantly with that particular area that's carrying the fat.
Yeah. And we're talking about women that are not pregnant or not had a baby or that. So just in case some of our postnatal ladies are listening in, they've just had a baby, of course it's going to be in that area wider now, and we're not worried about that because you will lose that in time. But it's important to lose that, I suppose, as well, and put it.
It is because for the it is an important consideration, and that's why it's important to look at this as now. I know this is being done in January this week, and that's why it's important to look at being managing your overweight or obesity as a lifelong endeavor, not something that you do for January. Now, the National Obesity Awareness Week it does encourage people to start making small changes by tweeting about them. They've got a hashtag. I was looking this up yesterday and I thought it was a good idea. Do something good for you. I think that's what they call it. And they've got a Twitter page and things like that, which I've just looked up. So that's how I know. I'm not affiliated with it or anything.
Who is that again?
I think this is the National Obesity Forum that is floating this awareness week. And for our listeners, if they've made any changes or if there's a good idea to go online and share the hair kind of thing, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So, but what I would really like to say is this can't just be a January thing.
Yes. So we're looking at, but it's a good time of year maybe to look at this if we're making New Year's resolutions, or if we measure something. People may use different ways of measuring their life. They may use it from January New Year's resolution to another New Year. They may use it from Ramadan to Ramadan or Eid to an Eid. But it's definitely a factor. A lot of people look at January to January and start thinking of, okay, what am I going to achieve over the next year? What goals do I want in place? What do I want to do? And if this is something that they want to look at and make sure that they are keeping healthy, how can I put a plan in place? It may be difficult in these cold nights or dark nights as well to go walking, because we do a lot about walking, talk a lot about walking, which we could talk about here as part of a diet, a way of keeping active and reducing that overweight. So you don't necessarily have to join a gym.
No, not necessary at all.
Or you could do something at home as well. A lot of our parents are at home and they could download something and do something at home as well.
Absolutely. I mean, I don't think there has been an age where there's been more help out there than the age we're living in now. And on the flip side, there is no age that has been more obesogenic, which is sort of promoting weight gain more than the age we're living in, sort of thing. The environment is both promoting, I wouldn't say, it's all the way you look at it. It's either the environment is there, where the reason why I say obesogenic is because it promotes our environment, especially where we live in Birmingham, you're in urban areas. It is now an environment that promotes driving or walking and that kind of thing. Foods that are easy, quick, cheap, easily available are more high fat, high sugar. But on the flip side, there are so many initiatives out there. There's so much online support. There's so much discussions that are going on. Keeping in mind the weather, we can talk about that later when I give you my top tips, if you like.
We'll talk about them later on.
But when you mentioned, I just wanted to cover one point, actually. So I've mentioned these big things, right? The chronic diseases and things like that. But there are also other obesity-related problems which affect people on a day-to-day basis. And that is probably something that causes the, background discomfort that actually adds up over the years that go on. So, you've got things such as reduced fertility with obesity. You've got things such as gestational diabetes as well. If you're, for women of childbearing age, that's a concern. Also things like breathlessness, increased sweating. You've got sleep issues such as sleep apnea, where you have a temporary interruption in your breathing patterns, not very safe at all. And a lot of obese people have treatment for that. It's lots of things such as joint and back pain. So if you want to start getting physically active, people might think, I would like to do that, but I have all these, I don't have enough stamina. I get fatigued easily. So some of our listeners might say, okay, that's great. I'd like to do this. Sure, but my joints hurt too much. My knees are hurting, are killing me. I can't, and that's a real concern, right? So how do they start?
Yeah, definitely. And can you get into that spiral of thinking, well, if that's the case, I can't do anything. Yeah. So I may as well not even start or even think about starting, because it's going to, when I try to do it, I'm either out of breath or, as you say, my back hurts or I have knee problems. So I actually physically can't do anything.
Yeah. And the way to do that is to, like I always say, if you know the why, then the how becomes really much simpler. So now that we've talked about the scale of the problem and what the concern is, or why it's a good idea to have a healthy weight for our height, for ourselves. The reasons why, now that we've clarified and touched upon that, now we can talk about the how, because in order to do anything, we have to be convinced about the reason to do it. Yeah. Because a lot of people will start in January, they'll make all these resolutions, but it's not like a January thing or a join the club kind of, the health club kind of thing. It's got to be why, it's got to be why. So we talked about the fact that yes, it's difficult to start. The first thing to think about when you're starting is to be realistic. And get that the social media image out of our, the Pinterest or the messages that go out there in media about what we should, quote unquote, look like. That's what needs to come out, and we need to get a more realistic image of. Just make it realistic for us. Now, if we've been a certain weight for a while, then it will take a certain time or a certain while for us to get to where we want to get to. And because it's everyone is at the weight, those who want to lose the weight, they're at the weight they are for various different reasons. So everyone's weight loss journey is as individual as them. We want to have blanket solutions for everyone, and I think that is the biggest reason why a lot of people give up really quickly.
Yes, because it is very individual. And when we look at this, you are an individual. I mean, we often talk here about mental health and mental well-being, but actually we're all connected here. So it's not just physical things, it's our well-being as well. And we need to take this gradually. If you're feeling really good about yourself, even though you are obese, yes, you can take your time, or you're a little bit overweight, and how to plan this, because you don't want to do something radically wise that will affect your whole life and then become worried and anxious over a problem that you never had before.
Yeah, absolutely. So you might be feeling really fine about yourself, and you're doing it because you want to reduce your risks for, and you want to, for the future, or you want to get rid of your knee pain, or you've seen other people in your family have maybe things such as arthritis or osteoarthritis, where your your joints, etc. There's pain there, or there could be various other reasons, But if you are thinking of doing it for that reason, it's never a good idea to get from a good place to a worse place in order to get to a good place. Do you see? Sounds a bit complicated.
It does sound complicated, actually. It's not, and I do understand what you're saying, because and people may go through that journey or start that journey because they've heard something today or make a New Year's resolution and just dive into it. And then, as you say, be in a worse place. So we want to be in a good place to go to a better place.
Yes.
Yeah. And enjoy our life with eating
Whilst
healthy. While we're doing this and eating healthy and maintaining our well-being, physical well-being, mental well-being, so that we can enjoy life, alhamdulillah.
Yeah, because let's face it, I mean, making changes to your lifestyle requires effort.
Yeah, that's true.
So what we can do is, we can talk about that, what effort we need.
We'll come back and talk to that after the break, because we're coming up to a commercial break actually in a few seconds' time. So there's a lot of things to talk about, a lot of interesting facts here. Thank you so much. I'm really enjoying this show, and I'm sure our listeners are as well.
You're very
welcome.
welcome.
Coming back after the break where we can talk a bit more about this in detail. So listeners, you're tuned into Unity FM 93.5. This is Parenting Hour here, and we're talking about obesity, overweight. We're with Misbah, who is our dietitian. Do tune into us after this commercial break, because there'll be a lot more interesting topics to come. Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back to Parenting Hour. You're tuned into Unity FM 93.5 here in Birmingham. You're listening to Parenting Hour here in January, one of the first couple of weeks of January, alhamdulillah. It's great being able to talk to you in this new year and talk to you about such an interesting topic about our health, our diet, our well-being, and how we keep ourselves the best we can, inshallah, in every way. So we're talking about physical well-being, mental well-being, spiritual well-being, but in a relationship to our physique, today. So we were looking at what it is that would be classed as obese or overweight, because we're linking this into Obesity Awareness Week. And we have Misbah here in the studio, who is, as you know, a dietitian and a lecturer, and she's got her own show, The Good Health Show, every Tuesday, 1 to 2 p.m. So you may be very used to listening to her and phoning in and asking questions, which is great, and she's very open, and we've had a lovely discussion up to this about our diet and obesity and how to keep healthy and the different factors around that. We didn't mention, if you did want to phone in, that you could, although this is a recorded show, but you could phone in and ask the studio, and Misbah, I'm sure, would get back to our listeners, if you do have a query. So the number is 0121 772 8892. And we're open to any calls or any feedback that you'd like to give us about the show. So before the break, Misbah, we were talking about a lot of the implications of obesity and how you would know if you were obese. And I was a bit surprised over the measurements there. For males, you were saying 40 inches. I'm still measuring in inches. And females, 34 inches. So something to be aware of, because a lot of people don't know if their BMI, that the BMI is 25 for overweight, 25, we're saying to 30 roughly, and obesity from 30 to 40.
It's a bit lesser for those who are of a minority background.
Which was really interesting to hear you saying that different cultural backgrounds have a different scale.
Because those from minority backgrounds tend to carry their weight more, around the middle region, and so it sort of tends to be, and also they're usually at a higher risk for things for conditions such as type 2 diabetes, etc. So the BMI measurements are a bit, start earlier for them. But the easiest way to determine, like you said, some people might think that they're doing fine in terms of what they're eating, etc. So how do we know if you're on target to becoming overweight? Is by gauging the way it actually happens, or the cause for obesity. So I'll just mention that now, if I may.
Please do.
So now weight gain basically occurs when your energy intake, so the energy that you take in through the calories that you consume, if that exceeds your daily energy expenditure, so your physical activity, and if this happens over a long period. Now, I've mentioned the word calories, but that shouldn't make people start calorie counting straight away, because that feeds into diet mentality. So we don't want people to start thinking diet straight away. And we'll come to that in a second. I'm hoping. But basically, weight gain happens when what you take in you know, in terms of food and in terms of how much
drink, I suppose,
yeah,
as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
I saw a picture that was going around on WhatsApp groups about the amount of sugars in different drinks in a bag. And it's only when you see this picture of the sugar bags underneath the drink that you realise, wow, that tin of Coke or whatever it is, Sprite or whatever that
7 spoons of I mean, we basically sort of went as part of the British Dietetic Association. I don't sort of mention which brand has how much, but it is information that people can look up when they read the food labels on the side of drinks and on the side of foods. So, you know, food labeling is a really good way to see how much sugar there is, and also people focus a lot on sugar, but also in terms of fat, because overall calories is what is important, because people just look at either sugar or carbohydrates, but calories come from all the different parts of your food. So I guess the way it actually happens is, and you know, the government's doing lots of work on this. There's a sugar tax reduction program that's out there where certain drinks, as you mentioned, that are high in, certain drinks that could be high in sugar, you know, are getting, you know, actually they're a bit more pricier to buy now. Yeah. Because, you know, because of the amount, you know, it's part of the government's initiative to create a healthier environment. So coming back to what the causes are, when you have excess energy taking in, you know, and that is more, so it's all about the energy balance. Yeah. So when so you can visualize it sort of like a seesaw, right? So the amount of energy that you take in, when it is higher than the amount of energy that you're that you're expending, or the amount of energy that you're
using on a daily level,
the amount of energy that you're giving out, then that's when you start storing it. Yeah, that's when you start storing it, and those calories get converted into fat, and then that's when that's how you start putting on weight. So you know, it's sort of your consumption of your calories, particularly from your fatty foods, from your sugary foods, if that is higher than what you burn off in physical activity. Now, if it's equal, then you're maintaining your weight. If the amount of calories that you're consuming from your sugary or fatty foods is lesser than the amount you're burning off, then you're going to be you're going to kickstart something called weight loss. So that's how you kickstart weight loss, when the amount that you're consuming is slightly lesser or lesser than what you're burning. Than what you're burning out. And then when this happens over a long period of time, you know, the amount you're taking in is more than what you're spending, then slowly it becomes weight gain. Yeah. So, you know, it's actually very simple science if you think about it. Of course, the disclaimer being that you shouldn't have any underlying medical health conditions, or it can be because of medications as well. Some medications, such as steroids, etc., they actually promote.
There's a lot of retaining of fluids, maybe from other medications as well, and of course, if maybe
so for that you'll need specialist
advice. And if we have nursing mothers out there that are breastfeeding as well, you know that, so they need to take extra advice for that and be aware of that. That there's
Absolutely. That's a very important disclaimer. So the information that we give out is for the general population. And if you're sort of a nursing mum, you're actually burning a lot more calories via breastfeeding, and that has to be kept in mind. So this information is just for but however, if they are trying to lose weight, which they can, then this is the simple science to remember. You know, any excess energy gets stored in your body as fat, and that's the energy balance, and that's what you can keep in your mind in order to. So when people start going on to diets, what happens is the kind of nutrition, although you might be losing weight, and that's for to start off with, that'll be fine, and if people think that's fine. Actually, I don't mean to say that's fine, but people think that's great because you're looking like you're losing weight. But you're not on your way to good health because all the nutrition is skewed. You know, you might be missing out on important nutrients that your body needs. And that's why diets are never a good idea. And they're actually, I talk about this all the time and say that diet is a very short-term plan. And if you want to start losing weight and keep it off, then there are no quick fixes, I'm afraid. There are no quick fixes.
So eating better and healthier in the long term is better. There may be some people listening in today that feel that they want to go on this diet and really go in for a couple of days of reducing everything and barely eating, and then have little snacks of half a biscuit here or there, because they say, really, I'm not eating anything, I'm just having this. I can only manage it for a short period of time and then decide, I'm really hungry, start eating everything then.
Yeah, because what happens is, because diet is equal deprivation, and your body will always, bodies don't like to be deprived. Our human bodies are very well designed, mashallah, to survive and to thrive. So if we, because it's not good for our mental health, and for over long term, it's not sustainable in the long term. So to put a lot of people's minds at ease, you can start noticing health benefits, and a good way to start, or a good goal to have in mind. Usually when I say these figures, a lot of people are surprised. They're like, really, just that much? That's enough? So the figure is around 5 to 10%. Now there are guidelines out there for this. The National Institute of Clinical Excellence has obesity guidelines are out there, and they recommend 5 to 10% weight loss. Just 5 to 10% weight loss in 3 to 6 months.
Okay, so that's the guidelines, 5 to 10% over 3 to 6 months.
Yeah, so you could either do 5% weight loss in 6 months, or 10% in 6 months, whatever is easier for you, whatever is doable for you. And so that would mean something as realistic as half a pound or 2 pounds a week. And no more than that. That is a safe and realistic target. Now, a lot of people will want to do a lot more, lose 10 kilos in 3 months or something like that. But if you think about it, say for example, so I work better in sort of kilos.
Okay.
I suppose. So if you think of, say somebody is, I'm just saying it in a very average and just a figure, that sample figure that's out there, 70 kilos. If you're thinking of losing weight, if you have justification for losing weight, if you are if you fall in that BMI, if your waist measurement is high, and if it's justified and you would like to lose weight, then it would be something like 7 kilos in 6 months, or 3.5 kilos in 6 months.
6 months.
That's it. 3.5 kilos in 3 months or 6 months. And just that will reduce your risk for type 2 diabetes significantly. And there are guidelines for type 2 diabetes by the NICE guidelines. And they say the same thing, that a very small amount, just that 5 to 10%, will show you a significant drop in your risk for the condition. Yeah. And that's it. That's all you need to. Yeah.
So it's very gradual indeed. And from your experience as a dietitian, can you give us some advice around how to start this off? Like, what kind of a plan would you need in your day to start eating better, eating healthier, to reduce that 3 kilos over 3 months or 6 months? Sometimes we all maybe have good intentions of doing things, and we start off good, but then sweet cravings come in, and you're not able to do that. So what should we be doing? Why should we be eating? Should we be skipping breakfast and just eat, or should we be skipping lunch? Or what advice should we be giving in general about this?
Okay, yeah, and I like the way you said it's in general, because yes, there is no blanket. There's no one size fits all, but there are certain things that research has shown have the maximum benefit, right? The first thing to remember is, now I'm very anti-dietitian, because diets don't work, if not for the long term. So let's just start off. If we were talking about plans and how to start, I'd like to first put that out there. Now the British Dietetic Association has some excellent food fact sheets for those of our listeners who are so inclined and they like to go online and look up stuff. They could actually go onto the British Dietetic Association and look at their food fact sheets. And there's a really good one where I just want to start off, but for 1 minute, just talk about the fact that how can you spot it if it's a diet. Anything that's asking you to cut out a food group, that's saying no to carbohydrates, no to fats, no to certain things, or eating a lot more, that would be sort of going along the lines of a diet. Okay,
that's good advice actually. So because we've heard of a lot of things that it's talking about increasing proteins, for example. I've heard people before going on protein diets and having a lot of protein
loads
only.
Out there,
Yes, there are loads of them out there. Protein only. But that that of course is a diet and must have some sort of down the line.
Yeah, there's sort of diets that say in one type. So I've heard of the chocolate diet. I've heard of the the cabbage soup diet. There's the coffee diet. There's the raw food diet. And if you like certain type of food, there's no reason why you shouldn't have some of it in moderation. That would go against the point of a diet, right? So diets are usually not a good idea. Other things is when, something says just anything's going to magically burn your fat, or this is going to give you very quick results. All this would be going down the route of a diet. And detoxing, or like you said, skipping meals, avoiding certain foods at certain times, not a good idea. And there's no evidence to say that will give you long-term results. There is no, and a superfood would be something that it's just a marketing term that's been created. Definitely that food would have good health, and good nutrients. But every food has nutrients. So when you start, coming back to your question, how would one start, is by driving the point home. There is no such thing as a good or a bad food. Every food has nutrients in it of some sort. Chocolate cake has nutrition in it, right? It's just about how much of that chocolate cake do you actually eat. So demonizing foods needs to go out the window when you actually try to start climbing onto the climbing on or getting onto the track of eating healthily or eating well, as I like to call it. So the first thing that I'd like to sort of say is, A, there is no quick fix, and B, everyone's journey is quite individual. So the first thing to start off would be balance and moderation. It sounds very simplistic, you might say, well, right? Am I eating, when you say balance and moderation, does that mean I have to eat not so much of bread, not too much of oil, not too much sugar? Well, not really, because it's to know how much of it you need to eat. So if you want to start off, again, a really good way to start off is going online, having a look at something called the Eat Well Guide. Okay. And that tells you what proportions you need to eat your foods in. So now, for those of you who haven't got internet access, for those of our listeners, or they just want to do it in a really simple, easy way, although this is a really easy way, it's like a picture diagram that tells you how much of what to sort of good recommended portion sizes. A good way to look at it is fill half of your plate with fruits and vegetables, another half perhaps with protein, and when I say fruit and veg, it could be any vegetable. It could be something like salad, it could be something like vegetable curry, whatever you choose to make in your home. Another half of your plate would be something like protein. So that would be either eggs. If you're vegetarian, that could be dal, lentils, pulses, or it could be something like chicken, meat. And when you choose meat, then, something which is all the visible fat has been trimmed off. So say a lot of people, for those of our listeners who are of the Asian backgrounds, they have something like mincemeat, which has perhaps lots of fat in it. So there could be hidden fat in your food. And we need to be aware of that. So if anyone who's interested, again, if they want to know about portion sizes and things like that, the British Dietetic Association is a really good resource, or they could call in and I'm happy to go over with them. So that's another. And the other third of the plate would be carbohydrates. So things like bread, pasta, rice, chapatis. And again, that could have hidden fat, such as oils and butter added to that.
So you're talking of a third of your plate.
One third and a half. There's no scientific, this is not an evidence, I wouldn't say that this is how it should be. There is evidence around things such as the Eat Well. But this is just a general guide of how people could start. So try and have more fruit and vegetable, try and have more vegetables on your plate, and have sort of, have portion sizes that are useful for you. So for portion size of for carbohydrates would be a fistful. So a fistful of rice. So my fist would be different to your fist. The quickest and easiest way is the first top tip would be balance and moderation. So have your carbohydrates, have your proteins, have your fruit and veg, have your dairy products. These are just to remember to have all of this in the day. And that's how, when you start doing this, the types of foods. So first we're looking at the types of foods, right? So when it comes to carbohydrates, it would be a fistful perhaps of rice, and my fist would look different. So 2 fistfuls, and there's a lot to talk about when it comes to this. So I'm just going to be very quick. It'll just be maybe 2 fistfuls at each meal time. That's quite enough, actually. And it's quite filling. That fills you up quite a lot.
Yeah, so a fistful for each meal for
2 fistfuls of carbohydrates.
Two, wow.
Yeah, so you can have around 6 in a day. Now you would say, well, isn't that a diet? But no, that's actually quite sufficient for most people, actually, if you think
that's
about
eating
it.
healthy. And you were talking there about meats and I assume that we could have the meat and the chicken and on our plate for some days of the week, but it may be that we do want to have that meat. So maybe, for example, we might want to have a lasagna or something like that.
Yeah.
And we are having visitors over and we're doing maybe something else. In different communities we'll do different whatever it is.
Yeah.
I'm sure once a week or that's not that, so long as it's in that proportion size, again trying to get more healthier minces if we can. So maybe going to the butcher and asking them to actually mince it in front of you, pieces of meat that you see. But you can do that.
Absolutely, and you should do that. And the thing to remember is it's sustainable. It needs to be sustainable. So we need to factor in things like weddings, birthdays, parties. If you don't celebrate birthdays, if you have things such as dinners that you have people who come over, whichever, events where food is especially
social,
made.
And social commodity for a lot of people too.
And the point is, if you're in a diet, you don't allow yourself to enjoy things like that. So that is so we need to factor in those things, and when we factor in, then we don't have, as you would say, relapse. So you don't really say, oh, I haven't eaten. And the point is to enjoy yourself at those important occasions, and make sure you still have the right portion sizes at that time. So you're still mindful when you're eating. So the point is, first of all, it's the food types of foods. That's what we look at. And the second thing is your eating behaviors. So if we think, oh no, I have to go to a dinner now and I have to have that lasagna and it's going to be a terrible thing, that will just start putting us back into diet mentality. Because your body doesn't care what you do to it occasionally. It cares what you do to it on a regular basis. So if I'm having, something like a very, maybe a food that's high in fat or sugar on a daily basis, that will affect my body more than if I have it once in a while. Yeah.
So what about all these chocolates and that creeps into the house over the holidays, and or even the ice cream that you want to have, you really like it. What about the one chocolate or the spoonful of ice cream after having your meal? Is that acceptable, or should we be trying to see, are we cutting out these puddings completely? What is your advice?
Well, different strokes for different folks, right? Some people work well when they have, whenever you want to make a start, it's always got to be slow and gradual. So if you're just going to get rid of all the chocolates and swap it with fruit in one go, it might not work. So it's good to have a stepwise approach. So if you want to start having 5 a day, your 5 fruits in a day, 5 fruit and veg in a day, and you want to start replacing, maybe you could just start with one. One portion of a fruit a day. So similarly, if you're having a piece of chocolate or some chocolate in the holidays, etc., how much is your portion? Are you having, maybe you you don't want to cut it out and make yourself feel like you're being deprived. Maybe all depends on what your starting point is. If you're having a slice of chocolate cake every single day and you want to kickstart this, and you've found that you are in the obese category and you want to start off your weight loss journey, half a slice of chocolate cake. Or maybe if it works for you, maybe it works better for you for having something like on the weekends or in the middle of the week, because this whole thing of eating healthy in the week and having these quote-unquote treat days can again kickstart the diet mentality. So you should be able to allow yourself to do that, to have what you like and a little bit of what you like. That will actually keep this going and that actually surprises people. You're saying I can have chocolate cake? Are you telling me I can actually eat that? Well, you can, if you don't allow yourself to have that, to have that smaller portion and a little bit of what you enjoy, because food should be enjoyed, then you're likely to cut it out and then suddenly, forget all about the great changes you've made.
So wonderful. We're coming to the last 2 minutes of the show.
Okay.
Wow, time passes by, and I do want to come to some top tips in summary of what you've said to enable people to remember all this information. So do you have top tips that you can Tell us.
Yeah, absolutely. So my top tip would be to balance and moderation. So have a look at what you're eating and make sure you're having all the different food groups. That's best. Number 2 would be to eat regular meals. So eating behaviors, you can have all the best foods in the world, but if your eating behaviors are all over, you're not having regular meals, that can still go out the window. So regular meals is my top tip number 2.
Regular meals.
Eating breakfast, if you're a breakfast, lunch, dinner kind of person, that's great. Or if you want to eat if you want to eat small snacks every 2 hours or 3 hours, that's also works based on what you go with. So regular meals, it has to be regular intake. So your metabolism is ticking along. Top tip number 3 would be physical activity. So if you've not been quote unquote working out, start with gentle movement. And then the recommendation is actually going up to 60 to 90 minutes of moderate activity if you're obese. It'll be hard for someone who's not doing it at all to go to that. So start with just 10 minutes in a day. So half an hour of moderate activity, something like walking is a really great way to start. So maybe you can do 10 minutes in the morning, 10 in the evening, 10 in the afternoon. Walk with your kids. Maybe you can walk up and down the stairs at home, around the house, in your garden.
Play with the children at home.
Play with Play anything that gets your...
It's all of these games are really good
and for us as well. So anything that gets your heart going. So these are my really top, in the amount of time we have, these are my top tips. Eat a balance and moderation. The second one would be regular eating. And the third one would be get moving, So there's lots of park runs that are around in Birmingham, and I'm sure there are in Luton and all over the country. Whatever floats your boat,
And there's a few runs coming up actually in the next few weeks, so you can all listeners look up them for yourselves indeed. Or if you want more information about them, do ring in the studio on 0121 7728892. Thank you so much, Misbah, for coming in. I can't believe we're near the end of the show already. Imagine the time has gone so quickly. It was really great for you to come and give us all those tips and interesting facts. Thank you so much, Misbah.
Thank you very much as well for having me. I've really enjoyed it.
And we likewise. And we hope that we have you back again, and that when people maybe would listen to the show, think about it, ring in about a plan that they want, that we could actually do something together live on. They can ring in anonymously. We don't need their names.
Sure.
We talk through their diet and how we can help them. It might help others as well.
Yeah, absolutely. That would be great.
Brilliant. Thank you, listeners, for tuning in to Parenting Hour. I hope you enjoyed the show, and we do hope you have a good week, and tune in to us next week, inshallah, on Unity FM 93.5 or Luton 105.1. Do have a brilliant week, inshallah, and look after yourselves. Assalamu alaikum.